A quick disclaimer before we begin. The PEMF podcast does not contain any medical advice, and the content provided is for informational purposes only. If you have any health concerns, please visit a healthcare professional. Welcome back to the PEMF podcast, and today I'm joined by Laura Fullerton, founder of Monk, the world's first smart ice bath brand that's turning heads across the wellness world. From raising over 2 million investment to working with names like Anthony Joshua and James Watt. Laura's gone from cold avoider to cold evangelist. And in this episode, we're diving into the science, the controversy, and the benefits of ice bath, from the muscle growth debate to mental health highs, and what Monk is doing in a very noisy space. So welcome, Laura.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. I want to start by talking about you a little bit and how you got into this space, and FittyBox, which was one of your other startups. So can you tell me a little bit about that first?
Fitty, it was my very first venture. And at the time I had a, good, stable job working in the world of advertising. But for me, health and fitness was just such a passion. And I don't know what it was like for you starting Accelerate, but I had this idea, and it was like a moth to a flame, and you just can't stop thinking about it. And I just decided I had to go out there and do it. But essentially, it was a subscription box. And this was back in the day, back in 2015, 2016, when some subscription boxes were, so popular. You had all the food ones, and there were a lot in makeup, but there was nothing that I wanted, which was in health and fitness. I decided to create it.
Yeah. And where did Monk start? So where did Monk fit into this? You went from that to ice bath, so it's a bit of a transition, but obviously still in the wellness space.
Yeah. I mean, Monk came about years later. I managed to sell Fitty, and then I worked on a few other things. I was involved with the Health Optimization Summit, which we've both exhibited at. And I had the idea for Monk, which really came out of pure frustration. So similar to you in the health space, I do all the weird and wonderful health hacks, from, the normal things like sauna and exercise to the slightly more, I guess, fringe things, whether that's, biomarker testing and eating raw frozen liver and all sorts. But I'd never touched cold water therapy because I've always hated being cold. And I just thought it sounded like a terrible idea. Like, why would I want to do that? It will be unpleasant. And I got invited to a breath workshop. Well, it was breathwork and ice bath. And honestly, I went along to it thinking I could just avoid the ice bath bit. When people do it, I'll just make an excuse, run to the bathroom or something. But I got pleasantly gaslit into doing it by some friends. And it was only hours afterwards that I just felt so good. I had this really calm energy. And at the time, as a stressed out founder, it just felt like I'd pressed the reset button. So really, I just wanted to do more of it myself. And I'd been buying endless bags of ice to put in my bath at home. I'd used frozen horse water troughs. I'd broken into Hampstead Heath ponds at night during lockdown, which turned out was a terrible idea because it was actually closed, not because of COVID, but because of E. coli at the time. And I got sick. And it just got to the point where I was thinking, why is it so hard to do something so good for my health? And some of the ice baths out there, you could either get inflatable blow-up ones, which I'd tried to use, but, they break and just goes disgusting when it comes to summer, and some were just crazy expensive. And really, I wanted to create the products that I wanted.
I think that really resonates with me, because I was excited to do this one because ice bath is something that fits into my protocol quite a lot. I really like it. There's reasons why I like it, why I use it, but I've also kind of gone through navigated the ice bath market, and like we all do, we try and cut corners. I've had 2 inflatable ice baths before I've now installed my Monk. So I'm very happy with my new Monk. We'll get onto that and the benefits of that one. But really, we talk about this on the podcast quite a lot in terms of the wellness industry. Like, a lot of the time when you buy cheap, you do end up buying twice. And in my case, 3 times. I've had 2 inflatable ice baths. And I think it's the way it's evolved too, because, I started with a very small one, no chiller by the side of it. And, it looks really easy to just chuck a bunch of ice in it. People were putting online, what about filling up big bottles with water and putting them in the freezer, and then you put that in the ice bath and you try and cool it down, and it doesn't really get cold enough, and it become a real chore to do it. And that's when something falls out of your routine. I think.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing, especially, we talk about it as a PMF. If you buy a big, clumpy, old, difficult to use device, we'll fall out of love with it very quickly. And I feel like that's what I did with these small ice baths. And the funny thing is, you mentioned getting sick from jumping in that lake as well. I swear this is what made me sick. I was using one of the inflatable ice baths, and I'd been using it for maybe a month or two, probably pushing the boundaries. Went on holiday, 2 weeks away, came back. I was like, do you know what? I really need to jump in that ice bath. Jumped in it, slipped in it because it was all kind of slimy at the bottom.
With algae and
yeah, exactly. And it wasn't that injured me. That night I was really sick. So, I can only imagine what was growing in that water. So it's another thing. It's not just, it's keeping them clean as well. So, and my experience now of using a monk is completely different. It's just like the water feels different. The getting in it feels different. It's so much more temperature controlled.
Love to hear it.
So yeah, I mean, my experience of it it's been great, and I've had to kind of navigate that to get to the right place. And we're not saying also you need to spend so much money on the best industrial ice bath out there. These I think Monk's priced really well for what it does. But coming back to your development, because that's what I really want to know a little bit more about in terms of, it took us a number of years to get Celerate to market, way more than I wanted to. And we saw you at the Health Optimization Summit, as you mentioned, in 2023. And I nearly bought one then. I was really like, love this, love the concept, love the look at it. It's great. I think it was either you or one of your team said, we're looking to start delivering in 6 months. I was already in the middle of a development myself, or just released Celerate, and I thought, that's not going to happen. So talk to me a bit about the development. Where did the idea, and why have you changed it so much from an inflatable ice bath?
Yeah, so everyone always says hardware is hard. And at first I didn't know what they meant. And it's just such a pointless thing to say. It's like saying everyone dies. You're like, yeah, obviously, like I know that. Like, of course it's going to be hard. But telling someone who does ice baths, well, now for a living, which is inherently hard, just telling you don't do something because it's hard, it doesn't make any sense. Anyway, when we started, we thought we could develop and bring this product to market in 9 months. And I remember talking to investors, and some of them have experience in hardware, and they're like, you're not going to do that. And I'm like, yes, we are. And we didn't. I remember someone saying, however long you think it takes with hardware, triple the timeline and double the cost. And that is exactly what happened to us, like textbook. Creating something from scratch that hasn't been built before. You have inflatable ice baths and you have chillers, but no one had really created this fully integrated unit where you have all the temperature control and ozone, and you can set schedules and everything. And hardware is frustratingly slow and unforgiving, and it's been a really long journey. We were in product development for 3.5 years just to bring our generation 1 product to market. And that was just the development. Obviously then you've got the manufacturing on top of that, but yeah.
It's been a long road. I got some emails from you guys quite recently, we're in 2025 now, saying we're delivering.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, right, I'm getting my order in, I'm doing it. Where did this ice bath, where did the seed start? What was your first ice bath like? What was your first experience? Because everybody seems to remember their first ice bath experience.
Yeah, no one forgets it.
No, that's it. And I've been listening to a couple of podcasts where you've been on them, or you've actually got your own podcast, which I've been listening to as well. And I say on this podcast quite a lot, I love ice baths. I use it quite often. My wife, she hates it. And the reason I'm thinking now she hates it is because I've been doing it wrong for her, completely wrong, in terms of, I cooled myself down, using it. I did the right protocol, got in, amazing, love the benefits. Then I'm like to my wife, you should try this. This is incredible. And she jumped in an ice bath at 3 degrees, never wants to get in one again.
Yeah. Not surprising.
No. So what was your first like, and where have I gone wrong in terms of getting her to hate ice baths?
So my first ice bath was in one of those really big inflatable ones. I think there must have been about 10, 15 people in there. And it was just a ton of ice and some water. And it wasn't pleasant at all. You know, when you step in and everything in your body is just screaming at you to get out. And it was probably, around 3 degrees, which I would say is way too cold for your first ice bath. And at an event, you know, it could be great because everyone's going through this shared experience and you're kind of hyping each other up and, you know, you don't forget it. It's memorable. But I didn't enjoy the actual experience. It was only, a few hours afterwards when I thought, why do I feel so good? And just realized it had quite a profound impact on me physiologically and psychologically as well. But yeah, for people getting started, you know, you see it online all the time, right? People are hacking into frozen over lakes and just getting into, ice water, which is way too cold. It's such a powerful tool, but you've got to use it safely in order for it to be really effective. So for a complete beginner, I would start at, 10 to 15 degrees, which sounds warm when you think, everyone just talks about 3 degrees, but actually you get all the benefits at those temperatures. Colder doesn't equal better. You're going to have a much more enjoyable experience. Therefore, you'll probably unlock the benefits and want to do it again.
And in terms of, your development with Monk, and we'll come on to the benefits in a minute, but just want to kind of talk about where this started and how it navigated and that sort of thing. We've seen you raise an investment. You've got and that's allowed you to be at these events to develop the product. We see on your website you've got Anthony Joshua and James Watt. For anyone who doesn't know, is the CEO and founder of, or co-founder of BrewDog, the beer company. So You've attracted these big players in the industry. How did it happen with Anthony Joshua? That's an interesting one for me.
Yeah, so we were raising our friends and family round, which was our first investment round. Because going back to your point as to how it started, I realized early on, hardware, this is going to be expensive. We're going to need to raise money. And I've had 2 businesses before, never raised capital, had no idea how we go about the process. But anyway, one of my first investors at the time, he knew of AJ's team. They nearly did a deal together previously. And so he just sent them the deck and just said, hey guys, working on this now. Is this of interest? And I think it was really good timing. Firstly, AJ loves ice baths. He's, such a believer in cold water therapy. It's part of his routine. Also not just for physical recovery, but for mindset. Like he'll often dunk his head before he goes and fights and things like that. So there was that natural alignment there. But also, I think his managers were just sick of buying bags of ice to put into his bath at home. Because, there wasn't a product on the market that he liked the look of, that he wanted to buy. And so, he came on board as a silent investor, same terms as everyone else, which I think also it says a lot about him. He's not just, a world-class athlete. To be able to see something that's essentially a concept, there wasn't even a picture of what Monk looked like. It was just an idea on a piece of paper. For him to be able to look at that and think, I believe in that, I want to back that, was huge. I think it's quite rare. I don't think there's a huge amount of athletes that really understand business and investing. And so I think part of it was just really lucky.
Yeah, it just aligned really well.
Yeah.
So I hear you also talking about kind of through lockdown, which I found really interesting, is that people making their own ice baths. You know? So, and the funny thing is, I looked at it myself, but I didn't go down the route where we'll come to. But I looked at getting like one of these pig trough feeder things, like the metal ones, because I like a bit of woodwork. And at the time, I was building the pallet wall behind me that if you're watching this podcast, you can see. But I wanted to build like a little wooden ice bath and put a chiller in it and all that sort of thing. But there was a lot of people and a lot of videos online about doing it out of fridge freezers.
Yes.
And funny, you posted a video recently of someone that just upgraded to a Monk, and funny enough, in their video they had had a converted fridge freezer that they were using. How did that come about, do you think? And is that safe?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I remember stumbling upon this private Facebook group, which, you have to request to join, answer a few questions. And back in lockdown, there were 6,000 people in this group at the time. And this group is just dedicated to making those DIY chest freezers. And that for me was an extra light bulb that went off that I thought, if there's this many people willing to get electrocuted and create this risky product, like surely there's something bigger here. Like, why is there not a product that's meeting their needs? So that was really one of the things that made me think I really need to create Monk.
Yeah.
And you know, I was one of those people, but when you're just going through these threads and seeing all these, you know, things that people have done in order to create this DIY product, you realize it's pretty risky. And also it's just like a rabbit hole. You know, you don't get this right sealant, or you get the wrong sealant, and this happens and you get rust. And I just thought, it sounds like I'm going to be making something that's so makeshift and dodgy that's probably not going to be helping my health if the water's, you know, dirty. And a lot of the time with setups like that, you're having to put chlorine in. And I don't want to put chlorine on my skin and be bathing in that every day. So yeah, I think they can be quite risky, but at the same time, it's a brilliant way to get started. I think you can end up, ironically, spending a lot of money doing that.
Yeah.
But, you know, if it's a way for people to access it and realize, actually, this is great. It's, you know, it's something they want to make part of their routine. Like I think for Monk as a business, it is great because it's almost like an entry level product.
And I think that point, we've talked about some good things already. Like in terms of you're building something, like you can go DIY and you can build something for your health. But if you don't do it correctly, it can also be completely counterintuitive, you know. Yeah. Doing a fridge freezer that may not be electrical safe, you know, is the biggest worry for me. But like you say, even using the wrong sealant and things like that, you can all start creating VOCs and breathing in all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
It's not great. And, you know, we see this in all different industries. We're seeing it in the PEMF industry where we're getting these cheap products flooding the market. And we've talked about the development and how long that took in terms of the ice bath. You know, it actually took us 6 years to get Celerate to market, which was delayed for other reasons. But one of the main things was that you can put copper coil into a mat and create a magnetic field. Pretty much anyone could do that. But it's the magnetic field that it produces. It has to be clean. It has to be the right slew rate. It has to be all these different things to be effective. And that's where it took so long to tweak. Then, you know, people are buying into these modalities and not necessarily seeing the benefits, you know, and they could do that in ice baths. You buy an inflatable ice bath, you don't have a chiller next to it. It's sitting at 19 degrees most of the time. People jump in it and jump out and I think, well, what a load of load of rubbish. That didn't do absolutely anything, and they're not going to see the benefits for it. And I think another thing for me that with the Monk is really nice is the whole self-cleaning process. So again, you don't also want something that's going to become a full-time job to maintain.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we're all busy. You know, you want something that when you need it, it's there and it's ready to go. So how do you clean yours? Because I know I used to chuck chlorine in my inflatable ones, and you know, again, that's a big no-no. Especially, you know, you don't want to be bathing in chlorine. It's not the best thing to be doing. So, how is Monk self-cleaning? How's that working?
So we use ozone. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when it came to the development, we were looking between ozone and UV, but mainly because of how often you have to change UV light bulbs, we felt actually ozone is by far the best. It's becoming the gold standard for cleaning cold water. You know, some of the Olympic pools are switching to use ozone now, which is brilliant. But yeah, it's got a dual filtration system. So you've got the filter that gets rid of the physical debris like hair and things like that. And then, yeah, you've got the ozone that's continuously circulating and cleaning the water. And it's, you know, it's the molecule O3. So you know how oxygen is O2. You just have an extra molecule and it makes it this super potent but completely natural cleaner. You know, it's more potent than chlorine and it kills all kinds of algae, even kills Ebola.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a new fact. So actually, let's move on to the benefits and the myths, because we met a few years back, but we didn't, you know, we were kind of running on these different paths and, you know, it's all been quite busy. But where we had the best conversation for me was actually in Austin at the Health Optimization Summit again. So each time we kind of go there, we connect and we have a good little chat. And at the time, I hadn't bought my Monk yet. I wanted to talk to you about it. And there's all this stuff coming out online now. So I thought it was all quite new, but actually I heard you talking about this like 2-3 years ago. But there's more recent studies in terms of like how muscle growth can be stunted from doing ice baths and all this sort of thing. And I was like, right, I'm gonna grab Laura and have a chat with her and really figure out whether ice baths are good, because she'll give me an honest answer. And I kind of came away from that conversation thinking, I love it even more. So I want us to try and have that conversation again and explain to everybody all these different benefits and when is the right time, when isn't the right time. So let's talk about, as someone that, we're doing this podcast, my gym, I like to do a lot of gym work. I'm interested in building muscle, looking good, all that sort of thing. And a study came out saying that ice bathing can, destroy muscles up to 66% and all that sort of thing. So what was that all about? What was that study trying to prove? And is there a way you can avoid that?
Yeah, so that study looked at people who strength train for hypertrophy and then jump in the water straight away. Mm-hmm. And you just don't do that. Like if you want to have muscle gains, you will just wait 4 to 6 hours after strength training in order to then ice bath and then get the benefits that help accelerate recovery without blunting any of those gains. So it's all about context. Unfortunately, we live in such a clickbait world where you have a headline like that and everyone's like, never do ice baths, they're so bad for you. And it's almost like if a study came out that just said, caffeine keeps you awake, never drink it, when actually just don't have a triple macchiato before you go to bed. So it's all about timing. We've put together quite a few in-depth blog posts with different protocols on when you should use it. So if you were, an athlete, or if you were just, strength training, you want to grow muscles, you want to look good, when you should use it. Also, if you were an athlete and you were competing in like back-to-back competitions, you'd use it in a really different way. And equally, if you were doing endurance training, like if you were doing an ultra marathon out in the heat, how you could actually use it before for pre-cooling. So again, it's different protocols for different outcomes.
Yeah. So if your main objective and goal is to grow muscle and that's what you're trying to do in gym work or whatever it is, would you say necessarily then that you want to be doing ice baths before training? Is that the kind of key takeaway, or is it more doing it on rest days or even just a few hours after training? Or
Yeah, it could be any of those. So I actually have a few friends, one of my physios actually, who again is in fantastic shape. He has a lot of different programs for muscle growth, and he started using it before he works out and finds he actually gets much more from a workout. You just need to do a bit of extra mobility before. But equally, if you were to wait 4 to 6 hours afterwards, that's a great time to do it. But that's where convenience comes in, because if you're going to the gym and your gym has an ice bath, you're naturally going to probably either do it before or not at all, because you're not going to sit at the gym and then, wait 4 to 6 hours or go back. It's just not that convenient, which is also when it's great if you do have an ice bath at home, and then, naturally it can just fit into your routine a bit better. But equally, I know some people who do save it for a rest day. Yeah. I think it's just so much of it's so personal as well. I think a lot of it comes down to personal preference.
And you talked about the clickbait, which is an interesting thing, because one video I see a lot now as well is women getting in and out of ice baths and saying worst thing they ever did, for the longevity, women shouldn't ice bath, all this sort of thing. So again, is there any truth to that? Or is there a time when women should be getting in an ice bath compared to when they shouldn't be getting in an ice bath?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic tool for women, just when used at the right time. So if you're in your menstrual years, you have your infradian rhythm, which is, your 28-day cycle, essentially. It's a fantastic time to use it around ovulation. But I would never personally cold plunge like during my period. Although saying that, I do have a couple of friends who do, but it's a much higher temperature just for a short amount of time, because they feel like it really helps with cramps, I guess, because it's, so anti-inflammatory. But there was a really fascinating pilot study that was done. Dr. Stacey Sims was talking about it, I think on Huberman's podcast. And it was a study where they took, I think it was a small group of females who had severe endometriosis. And they got them plunging for 10 days around ovulation. And within 3 menstrual cycles, their symptoms were almost completely gone, which is wild. It's a really debilitating condition. But I think, again, because it was so anti-inflammatory, I think it's a fantastic tool for females. I find personally around ovulation is such a good time. You have you're much more tolerant to the cold. And so if I wanted to do slightly longer or colder plunge, it's like that's the perfect time to do it. I would start to taper off in luteal phase. Yeah, avoid plunging during my period. And then like once you're in folliculars, just start tapering it back in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's important, and it's like using it as and when, and
yeah,
the right time for women. You know, so again, you know, when I put my wife in her first ice bath, and she's pretty much never done it since. Maybe I did that completely at the wrong time of the month.
Yeah.
Maybe it was too cold. You know, so there's protocols we've got to follow, and it just makes sense when to do it.
Yeah.
The other thing we see with ice baths, and we see this in the PEMF industry quite a lot too, is this notion of, like, when I talk about PEMF, it's like more power, better. And it kind of, the price dictates the power a lot of the time on a PEMF device. And so people think more expensive, more power, you're going to get a better outcome. But it doesn't really work like that. In terms of low intensity devices are better suited at home. You can use them every day. You know, there's not all this kind of, it doesn't give you this big kick. Whereas like high intensity devices are much better suited in a professional setting. But what we see with ice baths is colder the better, you know, and some ice bath brands now are kind of like they're boasting that they can get down as low as like 0.5 degrees. And I think that may be a bit counterproductive when we're talking about the benefits of ice bath. And I'm also been, you know, kind of captured into that notion where, you know, my ice bath a lot of the time is set to 3 degrees or 5 degrees. And when doing a lot of research for this podcast, everything I was reading was like 10 degrees.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, even I've been doing it wrong. So yeah, is there such thing as too cold?
I think there is. And, you know, to your point just there, a lot of the science has been done around 8 to 12 degrees, seems to be a lot of it. And it's particularly for women, it's generally accepted that women should plunge at high temperatures. You know, we're much more sensitive to the cold. Like my personal preference is 10 to 12 degrees. That's my sweet spot. You get all the benefits, but it's also a much more pleasant experience. You know, sometimes I'll go lower and I just find that more mentally challenging. It kind of depends what I want to get out of it. But I think the cold is also so personal. I mean, there's a lot of rules out there. People say, oh, you plunge for a minute per degree. So in theory, if you're plunging at 3 degrees, you do 3 minutes. If you're 10 degrees, you do 10 minutes. But if you're a complete beginner and 3 minutes at 3 degrees is way too much. So yeah, I think that there is, like everything, it's just context. And yeah, it is so personal. I know a couple of people, one guy in particular, Stephen, he's insane. He'll plunge at 0 degrees and easily do 10 minutes. And he feels amazing and he loves it. But I could never do that. I think some people are just hardwired differently.
So do you think, again, that's kind of a personal thing? Because where I've been doing 3 degrees for so long now, I feel like if I went to 10 degrees, it wouldn't affect me so much. But, you know, do you think I'd still get the physical, mental benefits from doing those temperatures?
Yeah, you definitely get the physical benefits, but it might not be as, like you say, it won't be such a mental challenge. But often if people are plunging at, you know, a certain temperature for a long amount of time, if you just have a couple of days break, or, you know, if you go on holiday and you come back and it is harder. And I think that's one of the interesting things about ice baths. I mean, I don't know your experience, but it never seems to get easy. Like you think like, oh, I've got this, but it's always challenging.
That 100%, you know, it's like, it's never easy. 5 degrees, 3 degrees, whatever, you know, my toes always curl up. It's like, you know, the first minute is a real mental battle to stay in that thing. You know, once you've hit that wall, you can kind of sit through it, which is what I always tell people. You know, the first minute to minute and a half is like the hardest part. You get past that and then you can get through it. Something I heard you talking about is also an alternative is cold showers. And funny, a lot of people say that they can't bear cold showers and it's a lot more difficult for them. I have the opposite actually, because I watched Wim Hof's documentary and there was a poignant moment in there where he was talking to Patrice Evra, and he said, if you go under the cold shower and you think to yourself that it's not cold, then it almost won't be cold. And that's something that I can do quite well, and I can get under my cold shower and I can have a full shower now with my soap and everything 3-5 minutes without it really bothering me too much. But I know a lot of people, even yourself, that say like cold showering is like the worst for them. And is that probably because the water's running off you and it doesn't have that ability to kind of create a barrier around you, which you can get in some ice baths?
Yeah, interesting. I've never heard that. Like trying to trick yourself into thinking it's warm. I'm going to try that.
The power of the mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I personally find them a lot harder. And I think it's just because, the water's, it's kind of hitting you everywhere. You're not fully, like you get an ice bath and it hits you in the face, right? You're fully submerged. But even if I'm, moving in the ice bath so you don't get that thermal layer build up, I still just find a cold shower harder. I don't know whether it's because you just have the easy ability just to either like turn it up or just like hop out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, it's like I'm in the Matrix just trying to dodge it at every angle.
That's good. And yeah, do you think that's a good thing for people to start cold water therapy?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic way because it's just so easy to do. It's so accessible. And I remember in the early days, that's how I started trying to get my fix if I wasn't, buying loads of ice to put it into my bath at home.
Yeah.
And it's funny earlier, actually, when you mentioned how, you think it's really accessible, just buy a load of ice and put it in or fill up these huge bottles of water. But a lot of people, you don't have room to fill up huge bottles of water and put them in your freezer. And I remember I actually had a friend, he got those large, I don't know what you would buy lemonade in or those kind of ones, filled them up with water. He bought a separate freezer to put them in. And then when he put them into his ice bath at home, it was one of those funny round inflatable ones. And he realised with them in, there wasn't room for him in there. So he had to leave it for so long in order for the water to get colder. And
it's just...
Yeah.
I actually saw one released quite recently, and they're like a chiller or an ice bath type concept, kind of saying they're moving the boundaries and because what they're doing is they're using your actual bath and then you put this little chiller on the side of your bath and you cool it down, which I think seems like a good idea. But again, you're going to have to fill up your bath. You're going to have to put the chiller in there. You're going to have to set it. You're going to have to wait for it to cool down. All of this process, like you say, even just putting some ice in there and waiting for it to cool down, all these sorts of things, putting barriers in the way. There's some PEMF mats on the market that are really heavy. And people said to me, just the process of unraveling this thing where it's so heavy, it's got these stones and things on it. You throw it on the bed. It's just enough to put people off doing it. So for me, you have to have it ready, sitting there, ready to go. Like if you're in that mindset to getting cold, like you've just got to get in.
Yeah, you're completely right. It's like, I love cold plunging in nature. That for me would be like the number one. I love doing it out, in the wild with friends. It's great. And
just not in stagnant lakes.
Yeah, just not in stagnant lakes. Saying that, a group of friends and I, we go down to the Serpentine and we plunge there, which is great. And I love doing it, but it's 2.5 hours out of my day. I can't do it every day. Maybe like once a week in winter. It's such a great thing to do, but it's the convenience I need of having an ice bath at home. It's 5 minutes and I'm done rather than 2.5 hours like before work. It's not possible.
Yeah, it's just the possibility of doing it, isn't it? So it's just having that accessibility. And that's the thing, we're doing a lot of, we talk about all this biohacking tech and, there is also this notion online now. It's like, why do you need red light? You can just go out in the sun. Why do you need PEMF? You can just ground. Why do you need cold water? You can just jump in a lake, all these sorts of things. But it's making it accessible, making it quick, easy, accessible. We don't live in caves anymore. We don't live on, we're not exposed to all the nature that we used to be. So it's kind of just bringing that tech, that nature of kind of transpiring into the home and making it accessible, making it quick so that we can still do 8 hours at work if we need to. But that day we've had a cold plunge, we've exposed ourselves to some red light therapy and got our PEMF in. So I think it's really interesting that we're all talking about this and stacking all these benefits. One thing I think we haven't really covered, which is the biggest thing for me, why I use an ice bath, and I think really it's the main benefit as well, because we talk about a lot of physical benefits with these modalities, but the mental benefits of ice bathing for me are just profound. And I think that's really why I use my ice bath. If I didn't get those mental benefits, I don't think I would use it maybe as much, because, if you've got a back injury or something like that, probably my ice bath wouldn't be the first place I went to.
Yeah.
But if I've had a shit day at work, like that's one of the, I'm like, I can't wait to get in that fucker.
Yeah.
Like
completely
I'm ready
the
to
same.
go.
Yeah.
And, that hour after an ice bath or jumping in a cold lake and that sort of thing, that hour was just incredible. There just seems to be something going on, which I'm hoping you're going to be able to tell me what's going on as to why you feel so incredible.
Yes, absolutely. And that almost like euphoric high after, it's not placebo, it's not woo-woo, it's chemical. There's a lot of research out there that it increases dopamine and norepinephrine. The dopamine spike is about 250%, and norepinephrine has been shown to be around 200 to 500% increase. And
is dopamine what comes from cocaine? Because we had Pro Green on the podcast a few back, and he's a massive advocate for ice baths. He loves it. He does it every day. It's one of his, we kept asking him, what's your top biohack? Hoping he's going to say PEMF. He was like, ice bath, ice bath, ice bath, which is cool. But he said, whether it was a study he read or something online, but he was like, it's been compared to doing cocaine now because of the chemicals it releases. And actually people that have like super addictive natures tend to gravitate towards ice baths. So is there a link?
Yes, there is. And the spike from cocaine is supposed to be about 250%, which is comparative to, the dopamine from an ice bath. But unlike cocaine and also exercise, which is, it's a very quick spike, the spike you get from an ice bath, it's sustained over a much longer period of time. But that is one of the, I guess, the key studies that people like to talk about. Yeah. But as well as those kind of neurotransmitters, you release a load of endorphins, which again is that kind of that high, that great mood increase. But it works on a lot of other different pathways as well. It's so anti-inflammatory, which isn't just the physical benefits, but that's also inflammation is really tightly linked to anxiety and to depression as well. So there's so many things going on, which is why I think, I would estimate most people today are really doing it for the mental health side of things. Whereas, for decades, athletes have used it. So it's always been associated with physical recovery and that side of things. But I think, the reason it's really exploded over the last how many years, particularly since COVID, when, depression, anxiety, and just unfortunately went through the roof. I think a lot of people have discovered the cold because of that. And I'd love your thoughts on this, because the reason I do it's for mental health. But I find when people talk about mental health, we're always talking about depression, anxiety, but we're not really talking about stress. And that for me as a serial founder is a thing that I've struggled with the most. And I think stress really it's an epidemic. It's, really serious. And it's something that I've definitely struggled a lot with. And for me, one of the things that ice baths, it's what they've really helped with. And there's something called cross adaptation, which is a phenomenon where the stress you're dealing with in an ice bath, you're overcoming, you're overriding your flight or fight. And the tolerance you build throughout that, it can ripple out into other areas of life. Once I've done an ice bath in the morning, it doesn't really matter what hits me throughout the day. I just feel like so much better equipped to handle it. And we hear it from our customers. They say that it's because of ice baths that they have better conversations with their husbands, their wives, their children. They just feel like they show up better in all areas of life, which is incredible. And I think that for me is the reason why I do it.
And I couldn't agree more. It's the same sort of feeling I have when I go for a run. You kind of just release everything, and I'll go for a run and come back and be in a much better mood than I was before I went. And it's the same thing with ice bathing. I feel like, because one thing I think you cannot do in an ice bath, especially in that first minute, is think about the balance sheet.
Yeah.
Impossible, because the only thing you are thinking about in that moment is getting out of that ice bath.
Yeah.
Or getting past that first minute, or getting past that first minute and a half. Do you know what I mean? It dulls the noise completely. Where you going, your body is going into fight or flight. It's what's going on? You need to get out of this situation. All these things are taking over. And I think it's super, super important. And that's one of the reasons why it's so good for stress, in terms of it just turns everything else off around you.
Yeah.
So the mental health side of things with ice bathing, I think, is for me is one of the one of the biggest key takeaways. And I stack it with other therapies, and that's for me the number one priority when I get in my ice bath, if that makes sense. So, forget the kind of what it's doing to your muscles and that sort of thing, as long as you're using it at the right time. But I'm not really getting in that ice bath to bulk up. I'm getting in there to get the right mindset to then get in the gym and do what I need to do. Then I get my PEMF for my recovery. Then I do my red light. And, so it's for me the kind of key takeaway. Contrast therapy is something else I wanted to kind of touch on, because we're seeing this a lot if you set up a wellness space, we've seen loads of it, which is great. We've seen all these wellness spaces popping up all over the place, especially in London. They're like every street corner now. I feel like the first place they go is contrast therapy. You get a sauna and you go an ice bath. You tick those two boxes. But again, online, you're seeing all these things where, it's really dangerous to get out of the sauna and straight into an ice bath. You're going to have a heart attack. Do you know anything around this area and kind of help us navigate this in terms of contrast therapy? And is there a safe way to contrast therapy? Is it safe?
Yeah, I think on the whole, absolutely it's safe. But if you are someone that has a pre-existing cardiovascular issue, you don't want to be going from one extreme to the other in terms of temperature. But if you're a healthy person, there's nothing to suggest that it's dangerous. There haven't actually been a huge amount of studies on contrast therapy, but I was listening to Dr. Rhonda Patrick talking about it in her protocol, and she just has a couple of minutes in between the two to acclimatize. And that's how I do it as well. I use the sauna, try and cool down, even if it's just for a minute in between. But equally, I'm not jumping into really, really cold ice baths, which I think also helps. And yeah, to your point, it's amazing. So many more places are opening that have that, that offer contrast. Some of them do have the ice bath set down to, some of them were nearly 0 degrees, which I just think it's irresponsible. If you're, a commercial space, you're dealing with people that might not have any prior experience with ice baths. I think places need to really, they have a responsibility. And fine if you've got multiple ice baths and you have them set at different temperatures, so you have higher ones. And as long as you're educating people and guiding them through it, that's great. But yeah, it does worry me when commercial spaces have them set down to near 0.
Yeah. And that's a good point, actually. I never thought about that, because that might be the first time someone's gone in and used an ice bath.
Yeah.
And if you've only got one option of 0.5 or nothing.
Yeah.
And I've done, I've actually been on the sharp end of a lot of kind of wellness trends in terms of the different modalities. And Josh, my podcast producer, who's helping us today, he's seen me go through quite a experience in an ice bath where it was set to 0.5, and maybe the protocol wasn't the best. And it was kind of a bit of me showing off, doing what I can do, and also the guy training us, maybe giving us a bit of a bum steer. But we were in there for 2 minutes, then we were out for 2 minutes, and then we were in for 2 minutes, and then we were out for 2 minutes, and then in for another 2 minutes.
Wow.
When we got out, I couldn't stop shivering. And I couldn't actually physically talk. And that went on for about half an hour.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Before I could actually speak. And although at the time it was quite funny, we're all sitting down having a cup of tea afterwards, and
were you just like
my body had just gone into like shock, or what's it called when hypothermia, there was definitely some kind of hypothermic reaction, because like I say, he was asking me questions and I just couldn't even get the words out, where I was shivering so much. So there is, like you say, there's a degree of responsibility to understand these things. We're seeing hyperbaric oxygen therapy kind of popping up as well, which again, I think is amazing. It's incredible. But you have to do it right. You have to do, there's ways in which you can do that wrong as well. So yeah, cold is definitely not always better. Knowing the right protocols, and in the contrast therapy and that sort of thing, I think we need to change this notion, what we're trying to do with PEMF, in terms of like, you don't need to spend too much money. You don't need to get the most powerful device. You don't need to find an ice bath that goes down to 0.5 degrees to get the same benefits, I think is the point I'm trying.
Yeah, minimum effective dose.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like you pushed it way too far in the ice bath. I've been there too. We were out at the Serpentine, and this was back, I can't remember whether we were raising our seed round or our friends and family round, but there was a potential investor there, and he was really interested in finding out more about Monk. And we were in the water talking, and I kept thinking, I really need to get out. It was really cold, and I just stayed in because I was like, this is a really valuable conversation. And afterwards, I was trying to hold a cup of tea, and my hands were just shaking so much. And similar to you, I think it's how it affects your prefrontal cortex. I couldn't speak properly, and so I did a complete disservice to trying to tell him all about Monk. But yeah, I think sometimes maybe you have to find your limits. But yeah, sounds like we both found ours.
Yeah, that's it. And I don't want this to put anybody off using ice baths. It's just do the right protocol. And I think the good thing about Monk, and this is a good point we can put in there, is that what is a smart ice bath? It's something we probably haven't touched on yet. And something I think that is really cool with your device is that you have these protocols. And I'd never thought of that. You've got a little phone holder on the front of the Monk, and I thought, what's that for? Maybe like taking videos of myself getting in. That's what I've been using it for. Then I discovered RAP, and you've got these guided protocols. It starts at 15 degrees. It starts there. You go slower. And I didn't realize that the light on the front of the ice bath also flashes with your breathing.
Yes.
So we did a reel, which was really cool. It had a great reception with the ice baths. And it was like, the point of the reel was don't forget to breathe. And you think, well, it comes second nature. You're obviously going to breathe, but you do forget to breathe.
Yeah,
you get in an ice bath, takes your breath away.
Yeah.
And you forget. So having your little guided sessions on there, I almost can't do it without it now. I think it's great. So
amazing.
It's you get in, it tells you to breathe. It's got your little light that you breathe with. And again, this is a safe way of doing it. We're making ice bath as safe as possible and as easy to understand as possible and as accessible, I think. So yeah, why did you think about that? Where did that come from? Why was that missing from other ice baths?
It came fairly early on, but do you know what? When I was first coming up with the concept of Monk, I was just thinking about it in terms of the hardware, just having a beautiful device that has certain functionality that wasn't in others. But it was then, when I was just getting more and more into it, I realized that so many people just don't know how to use it safely or effectively. They are just jumping in at 3 degrees. And I was looking at other products like Peloton. It's almost like comparing a stationary bike to a Peloton, when you have the instructors and the music, and it's just a really different immersive experience. And that's what I wanted to create with Monk. So not only are you telling people, guiding them like what temperature and how long they could be staying in, but it was the soundscapes and the voiceover and everything you've got talking people through it. Because I think if you're a complete beginner and you've got a voice that's saying, look, you're 30 seconds in, this is what's happening in your body, it just gives you so much more confidence. And from leading, thousands of people through ice baths, that's what we found people really needed. They just need that almost reassurance that they're doing it right. The first program we created was the acclimatization program, the one you mentioned. You start at 15 degrees and slowly go all the way down over like a number of sessions, increasing like time and temperature, using both of those as levers. And then, we created other ones. There's like a morning awakening, there's a stress reset. And I think it's a little bit like going to the gym. Some people want heavy rock music and want to be shouted at. Other people want a really uplifting experience. And you can just create so many different experiences using, different style of music and voiceovers and things like that. I think we're just really scratching the surface now as to those kind of experiences we can create. I
think it gives you a focal point as well to just zone in on, because those 3-5 minutes in an ice bath, like, they're not the most pleasant, bearable experiences a lot of the time. So it's like, if you're not thinking about the app, the breathing, listening to it and tuning in and trying to get to the end of that piece, you've got a timer on it as well. So you know when it's, you know how much you've got left. I feel like now that I'm kind of like honed in on that, and it's getting me through the process a lot easier. So it's rather than just sitting there thinking, I want to get out. I want to get out. I want to get out. You know, it's giving you something else to focus on. So I think that's a really good concept.
Amazing. I'm so glad to hear it. And then, we haven't talked about the wearable integration side of it. I use Aura and Whoop, and, a ton of people in our space just love data. And I just thought, well, what if we can just prove how it affects HRV and sleep and some of those important metrics? So, we integrate with, I believe it's 18 different wearables at the moment, and we'll be increasing that. And at the moment, we're only focusing on those few metrics, but actually in the back end, if we can then see, if we were to integrate with, a menstrual tracking app, for example, and actually we can see how people respond during different phases and just, tons of other different data points, and see what the correlations are, and then how we can kind of play that back to people. And, we're in the very early stages of that at the moment. But I think where it can go is really exciting.
So say, for example, with the Whoop, what's it looking at? So if I get in the ice bath with my Whoop on, I actually don't wear it at the moment. I used to wear a Whoop, getting on with data. What is it telling me that is going to be interesting, if that makes sense? So what am I getting out of that trackable?
Yeah, so at the moment, because we integrate with Whoop, Aura, and a ton of others, we're just pulling through, or we're just showing to the customers HRV, sleep and resting heart rate. More coming in future, but that's what we're focusing on to start with.
Yeah. So will I know, like, my sleep was better that night because of the ice bath I did, or it's been affected by that, or and a HRV, because HRV is something I'm like trying to increase. I'm trying to figure out ways in which really affects my HRV. So will that be able to tell us, like, if my ice bath that day, that's affecting my HRV, and if I don't,
Yeah, you'll definitely be able to start seeing those correlations. I mean, it's the thing that's difficult is you can't isolate it just to the monk, because, you could do other things. You could be doing PEMF, you could be doing XYZ, you could have had a terrible night's sleep or an amazing night's sleep, and obviously all these things add up. But over time, you'll definitely be able to see, actually, this is starting to impact me in a really positive way. Yeah.
So talking about PEMF and ice bath, so I wanted to kind of touch on that in terms of like the protocols and that sort of thing. So I found a really good study, article, which I'll read out in a minute. But obviously, people listening to the podcast, most of these people will have a PEMF mat, and they want to look at other modalities to add into it. And they're thinking, like, how does a ice bath fit into, I can't put my PEMF in the ice bath, all this sort of thing. So what's the protocol around this? When's the best time to be doing PEMF and ice bath? I mean, I'll because of this, I want to do it justice. So I've found this article. I'll read this out. It says, combining PEMF and ice baths can yield excellent results for recovery, inflammation, energy, overall resilience. However, the order and timing matter and depends on your goals. So the recommended protocol that I found was PEMF first, then ice bath. The reason for this is PEMF will prime the body, enhancing circulation, reducing inflammation, promoting cellular energy, which is the ATP production, which we talk about quite a lot on this podcast. Doing it before an ice bath can help the body handle the cold stress better, optimize tissue repair, and reduce the risk of excessive vasoconstriction, which I thought was quite interesting, because we talk about how PEMF helps with vasodilation, so it's opening up the blood vessels, all that sort of thing. One risk of ice bathing is vasoconstriction, which is where people talk about problems with the heart and that sort of thing. So not only the benefits of PEMF before and after an ice bath, it's also almost making it safer in effect. So something that I found really interesting, wanted to share. So the other alternative is you can do ice bath before, PEMF after. The reason we would do that is more for deep recovery and enhanced anti-inflammation. So if you do PEMF after the ice bath, it's going to accelerate the rewarming and circulation. So again, with the vasodilation, opening up the blood vessels, you're going to help to warm the body a bit better. It's going to ease any cold-induced muscle stiffness and faster tissue regeneration. So what this article was sort of saying, which was really interesting, was like, for the everyday user, if you're using PEMF every day, it's generally better to do PEMF than ice bath. If you're an athlete and you want like quick recovery and all that sort of thing, then it's generally better to do the ice bath than the PEMF. So yeah, found that really interesting. You've started using PEMF now?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
It's been a few weeks. And you know, I was away last week on holiday and I really missed it. I was so excited to come back and do it that evening before bed.
See, I should have taken it with you.
I know.
One of the modalities you can put in your suitcase.
Oh, what there's control.
Yeah, that and the mat you can.
Yeah. Oh, my suitcase was packed. Yeah,
I can imagine. So you're doing it with red light, I believe.
Yes,
you're doing
I am indeed.
So you're doing your red light and your PEMF, getting that in the morning.
Yeah.
Have you figured out your little protocol in terms of if you're going to do PEMF, red light, and ice bath in one day? How does that look for you?
Yeah, so I haven't paired it with the ice bath yet. So I've been really excited since we've both been researching like what's the best way to use it. So I'm going to try both ways, but I interestingly read something else as well. Sorry, I might need to cut this bit. Yes, I think when I was researching it and it was saying using ice baths before PEMF is really good because the ice bath lowers all the inflammation and then PEMF recharges cells. So you're almost like resetting. And also, because you know the ice bath, it eventually puts you into the parasympathetic state, which also, PEMF does really well. So then it kind of continues that. So I think if I was looking to use it, particularly in the evening, I think I would try doing cold first. But also, I believe it's better to do red light after you've done an ice bath. I can't remember why off the top of my head. I think it maybe penetrates your cells deeper or something, but it's beneficial to do cold first. So because I stack PEMF and red light together, it seems to make sense to me.
Yeah, and I think actually the ultimate protocol would be PEMF, ice bath, red light. I think that would be, if you've got time to do it, and you think that's going to take you all day, but really PEMF is 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Ice bath is 5 minutes. Red light, another 10, 15 minutes. So, you put in that in like a 40, 45 minute protocol, then because I'm the same. I actually prefer to do ice bath first and then get on the full body because I've got, which I use every day, is my PEMF and my red light, and it's a full body setup. So the full body red light has got a really nice warming effect.
Yeah.
So I almost want to get in the ice bath, get out the ice bath, lay under my red light and be like, oh yeah, that's the one, and it kind of warms you back up. You still get all those benefits of the endorphins and stuff from the ice bath, but kind of just get warmed up a bit nicer, more naturally. But yeah, I think the ultimate protocol would be PEMF, ice bath, red light.
Yeah. I'm going to test it over the next month or so, trying both. Let's check in like a month's time and see how we're both doing with it.
And you can check your deliverables on your Whoop and your Oura Ring. I just noticed you're wearing both.
Yes, I am. Massive data geek.
Data stacking.
Yeah, I love Whoop for workouts and like all the data during the day. And I prefer Oura at night because it's got the airplane mode, so you can turn off the EMFs. If Whoop could bring out some sort of airplane mode or way to turn off EMFs, that would be dream. Yeah,
ideal. That's why I've tried mentioning it to him a few times. Tried tagging him in a few posts. You got to get an airplane mode on there. But no, I talk about this like using my Whoop before because it really has changed my approach with alcohol because. I've never had a problem with alcohol, but I can see what it does to me the next day when you have even just one glass of wine or whatever it is. Like you can really see your body battery just go through the floor and deplete when you get up the next day after just
it's
a small
crazy,
amount of alcohol.
isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It
insane,
really affects me. 1 or 2 glasses of something completely trashes sleep and recovery.
Yeah, 100%. What's next for Monk? What's the future look like for Monk? Have you got more plans with the app? I think you kind of touched on. Have you got more kind of brand ambassadors you're looking to get involved? You've just kind of, as I say, you've been in development for a long time, but you've just started delivering. Is there changes you want to make to the Monk ice bath as it is? What's the future look like?
Yeah, it's going to be a huge year for us because this is the first year where we're fully in market. We delivered all of our pre-orders at the beginning of the year, and we are going to be expanding to the Middle East. At the end of this year, which is really exciting. I think, are you guys out there?
We're not, so we'll have to have a conversation after this.
Yeah, we will. 'Cause, the biohacking and generally the health and wellness market is growing 21% year on year there, where everywhere else in the world it's still at like a solid 4-5%, but it is just booming. I think, let's talk about that later. I think it'll be a really interesting market. So international expansion. And there's a lot that we're going to be doing on the app. I can't say what at the moment, but we're definitely going to be utilizing AI a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and an app is another thing that we're also looking at Accelerate, because we don't want the app to communicate with our device, but we want the app to give you more of a user experience, a bit like what you're doing with the guided breath work and stuff within the iSpa.
Interesting.
So, yeah, lots of things we can
That
talk
would
about.
be exciting. Yeah, because when I use my PEMF mat, I do it in front of the red light, but I also do some sort of breath work or meditation or something when I'm on there. So if you had an app that did that.
Yeah, no, and that 100%. So we don't want to give away too much just in case someone beats us to the post. But no, 100%. Like PEMF, red light and oxygen are the three real core pillars when you want to kind of stack those benefits all in one hit. And you don't necessarily have to throw yourself in an oxygen chamber. You don't have to put something up your nose to inhale. Breath work is so powerful.
Yeah.
So if you can sit or lay on a PEMF mat in front of a red light, underneath a red light, and do breath work, the benefits are absolutely profound. So yeah, we're definitely trying to tap into that too.
Interesting. Am I right in thinking that you'll get more out of PEMF if you're well hydrated?
Yeah, there's a lot in that because it helps with the detoxification before and after PEMF. So I mean, hydration in essence with anything, it helps. It's similar to what we say with PEMF. If you do PEMF therapy before an oxygen therapy chamber, if you do it before an ice bath, if you do it before red light, you're not only going to get the benefits from those modalities, but you're going to expand those benefits because you've kind of like prepared the body for them. So same sort of thing with water. If you're well hydrated, again, you're going to get the benefits. So hydrate, PEMF, red light, oxygen, and throw yourself in an ice bath afterwards.
Dream morning.
Yeah.
I also do having just downed a glass of molecular hydrogen water. So maybe there's some extra brownie points there.
Exactly, yeah. So hydrogen water is another thing, isn't it, that's kind of coming through the ranks at the moment.
Yeah.
It's really taking off. I know Gary Brecker's talking about it. They've just launched their own kind of hydrogen tablets, which seem a lot more easily and readily accessible than these kind of hydrogen taps that have been kind of more the norm until now. I've definitely tried the hydrogen tablet route at the moment, and I'm seeing its benefits. It's like
I stocked up when we were in Austin. I think I came back with 3 bottles of them. So
yeah, exactly, because they're actually quite difficult to get hold of in the UK at the moment, especially Gary Brecker's brand or his son's brand, because it's a hype, and it's like in the UK we're always the last to get it. So yeah. So Laura, we could talk for hours on ice bath. I know we did at the last Health Optimization Summit. I took quite a lot of your time, and that's why I really wanted to get you on the podcast because we're seeing so much amazing benefits with cold water, and it's not just throwing yourself in some cold immersion. There's so much more to it. So really wanted to get you on, talk through the benefits, talk through some of these myths and everything that's going on online, or this clickbait at the moment. That it really doesn't have a lot of substance, but we can tell when's the best time to do these things. But anybody listening to this podcast, we want to get more guests on like Laura, in the specialists in their field, and we can't do that without your subscriptions, without your if you like and follow us, we can get more and more amazing guests, and we can provide for this podcast. So thank you so much for joining us today, Laura. And I'm sure there's so much more we can cover, so we might have to do a part 2 at some point.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me.